So this whole revolution that we're seeing in healthcare has been driven and led by mothers, of course, aided by chiropractors and naturopaths and homeopaths. However, it's the mothers who are like, I don't want my children to be sick anymore. What is going on? And they've been the ones pressing for research, reading the research, bringing it to lawmakers, bringing it to their doctors, questioning. And for a period of time, all that stuff was censored severely, but the mothers never backed down. And so it's very impressive. I'm very grateful for the strength of the mom to not back down and to push this whole movement forward that at this point now is unstoppable.
Welcome to the Foundational Health Podcast, where we provide education and inspiration to help guide you on your journey to look better, feel better, and most importantly, heal better. My guest today is one of the most elite speakers in the natural healthcare world. His ability to engage and captivate an audience is truly profound. Dr. Joel is one of the most respected and successful chiropractors in the entire profession and has trained countless young chiropractors to not only be successful in practice, but to also educate their patients on the importance of leading a healthy life. Along with Jordan Rubin and Sayer G, he is a partner and advisory board member of one of the most extensive health websites in the entire world, greenmedinfo.com. He is also one of the founders of standforhealthfreedom.com, alongside attorney Leah Wilson, who I'm excited to announce will be a guest along with her husband, Dr. Nick Wilson, on one of my upcoming February podcasts. And now for my conversation with Dr. Joel Bohemier. Dr. Joel, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the Foundational Health Podcast.
Right on. Thanks for having me, Dr. Kevin.
You are very welcome. Okay, so I'm excited for your discussion today, for countless reasons. One of those reasons is because I have had the pleasure of hearing you speak, I would say no less than 2 to 3 dozen times, sitting in the audience at seminars, and I never get sick of it. I don't think
Poor guy.
not at all.
I feel for you, buddy.
I was As I was prepping for this interview today, I was thinking I probably have heard you speak more than anybody else, and I have never ever gotten sick of that. I'm always hanging on every word. I'm on the edge of my seat. And the reason for that is not only are you just an absolute wealth of knowledge, but your passion comes through every single time. So and that's something I struggle with. I'm very passionate on the inside. My passion doesn't come through as well. So where does that passion come from you?
Oh boy. I think, it's just a real inner desire to want to share to want to share my mission. I feel like I'm walking my purpose and mission, and a desire to want to reach as many people with that, because I have life experience with that mission and passion, and I have practical experience taking care of patients and kind of spreading the message that way. So yeah, really, I would say I get most excited when I kind of see in the eyes the light bulb go off in someone's brain about maybe considering a different approach to health and well-being, because that's obviously my passion. So and I've been doing this for a long time, even pre pre becoming a chiropractor, pre Bachelor of Science degree. So literally my whole life has been kind of somewhere around natural healing, because my father was a chiropractor and was heavily involved in chiropractic, and we lived a different life. We didn't live a traditional life. So I know the difference between the life that I led compared to my buddies who grew up with me, and the outcomes. So I'm super passionate about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, it absolutely shows. And speaking of that, speaking of your father, and the legacy that he left. I've heard countless chiropractic stories over the years. I've got, kind of a cool story myself where I've been adjusted pretty much every single week since I was a baby.
Yeah.
Actually, do you know the name Joe Stuckey?
Okay, so such an interesting story. Of course I do.
I figured you did.
My father brought Joe Stuckey up to Winnipeg, Canada, where I'm born and raised.
No kidding.
to give seminars to the local chiropractors in Manitoba because he was from Minnesota. And
How
I
awesome is
and
that?
I only found out that when I was, giving a talk at, I think did you go to Northwestern?
Oh, I went to Palmer,
Oh, you went to
Iowa.
Palmer. So, okay, yeah, so I was giving a talk at Northwestern, and Joe Stuckey was there, and he said, in the middle of his talk, he said, "I went up to Winnipeg, to see your father," and I had no clue about that. So, yeah,
Wow,
really
that's
cool.
awesome.
He
So
was an incredible guy, incredible chiropractor.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and so he is the reason that I'm a chiropractor. That's where my parents took I remember we would load up our entire family every single Saturday morning into our station wagon
I
and
love
drive
it.
to Stuckey Chiropractic and get adjusted every single Saturday, and so he's the reason I'm a chiropractor, and I grew up, thankfully, in a naturally health conscious family, but not to the same degree that you did. And certainly,
Maybe.
like, the legacy that your dad left is absolutely incredible and how he, along with you, has inspired so many other family members. So tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, thanks for allowing me to share that because, like Dr. Stuckey in your life, my dad was that to me, obviously. And, my father was the first chiropractor in our family. He graduated from Palmer, same school as you, in 73, I believe, 1973. And from that time, we now have 46 chiropractors in our family. So
That's
it's
just
just
unbelievable.
two generations deep, but it's like far and wide, right? So all my
Yeah.
cousins, my sister's a chiropractor, uncles and aunts are chiropractors. I have a great aunt who's a chiropractor. She became a chiropractor at 54 years old or 56 or something like that. Practiced for
Wow.
20 years, 3 mornings a week. Had a great career. But yeah, we grew up totally differently. My father was a sick kid. He had sinus migraines, sinus problems, and sinus migraines pretty much every day of his life, from the age of 10 to 18. And he was living on the Dristan drug, like he would do the nasal spray, right? And like my mother recalls when they were dating that he would always have a bottle of Dristan on him. Like, and the floor of his car, he had a little Datsun, and the floor of his car was just empties of Dristan. So his
Dang.
parents would buy it by the boxload because they knew the pharmacist. And it wasn't until the neighbor down the street when he was 18 said, "You need to go to the chiropractor." His parents said, "No way, you're not allowed to go to a quack," because this was like, the late 1960s at this point. And but he went regardless of because he was so desperate at that time because he was having daily migraines. And after so the neighbor paid for his first adjustment and gave him bus fare to go. So he went to Dr. Henry Marcoux, and I believe Dr. Henry Marcoux is still practicing. He must be in his late 80s or his 90s now. And I believe he's
Wow.
still practicing part-time in Winnipeg.
That's
That's the
amazing.
last I heard. And yeah, so he went, and after 3 months of adjustments, he never had any more migraines, never had any sinus problems again. So he said, "That's it. I'm becoming a chiropractor." And my grandfather basically disowned him for the time from the time he left. He went to Toronto and then he moved to Palmer, to finish his chiropractic college. And then it wasn't until when my dad came back and opened his practice in the same community where my grandfather's friends, who were judges and lawyers, were seeing him, telling my grandfather what a great job and what incredible healing they had through seeing my father as a chiropractor, that my grandfather finally acquiesced and kind of welcomed him back into the family because it was like he was embarrassed that his son was a chiropractor. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
incredible, and I can believe that because actually my journey kind of started in the same way with my mom when she was 15 had suffered with migraines for a couple of years, and her parents absolutely forbid her to go to the chiropractor for the same reason. Chiropractors were quacks then. Well, some
Yeah.
people still think they are, but not as many, thankfully.
Not as many. Yeah.
But yeah, so her parents forbid her to go, and a neighbor, she called him Uncle Ray, paid for her to go and
Oh, you're
snuck her to
kidding.
the chiropractor.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and years of migraines disappeared within her first adjustment. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, then the rest is history from there.
Wow. Great
So cool.
news. Likely the parallel paths here. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Nutridyne is my number one choice for the vast majority of my family supplements. I'm a huge fan of nearly everyone taking what I call the foundational four supplements: a multivitamin, a spore based probiotic, omega 3 fish oil, and vitamin D3 with K2. The large majority of people are deficient in many of these nutrients, and they are the building blocks to gut health, immune system strength, brain health, heart health, and every other aspect of your health. Don't fall into the trap of chasing symptoms with supplements, and instead start to rebuild your health with the foundational four. We partnered with Nutridyne so that you can save 15% on every order, and not just with the foundational four, but all of your other supplements as well. Go to foundationalhealth365.com, click on Shop Brands, and then Nutridyne, set up your account, and you're all set to automatically get 15% off all orders. Now let's get back to the Foundational Health Podcast. One of the reasons that I love hearing you speak is like I said, I'm incredibly passionate, and I'm passionate about chiropractic and so many different things. But not only like when you speak does your passion come through, but also the simplicity of your message. And some of the times that I've heard you speak, probably all of them actually, the way that you explain chiropractic above and beyond like what the general public thinks of it as, as pain relief for back pain, neck pain, migraines, those types of things. But above and beyond that, like you explain that so well. So can you just talk to our audience about like what is chiropractic and how can it help with things like sinuses for your dad and things like having somebody heal from a chronic disease? Like how does that work?
Well, okay, we can get into this. This will be fun. I mean, everybody thinks chiropractic, neck pain, headaches, back problems, like that's like the obvious stuff, but it's just really the tip of the iceberg because, as chiropractors, we deal with the nerve system. The reason we adjust the spine is because it houses and protects the brainstem, the spinal cord, and the nerve roots and those nerve roots go to every major organ of the entire body. So people aren't aware that, like, that a bad neck could cause a bad heart, or that a bad back could cause digestive issues or reproductive issues, because the nerves that exit your lower back go to your gonads, for example, and can cause erectile dysfunction or dysmenorrhea or, menstrual problems and things of that nature. And so what's interesting about chiropractic is that it affects all tissues, all organs in the body, because all of those are under the control of the brain and the nervous system. Right. And so I love digging into and diving into research. And in 2004, they did this huge retrospective analysis. 2004, so this is 21 years ago. They did a retrospective analysis on the benefits of chiropractic care for people who feel good, called asymptomatic patients, people who don't have any symptoms whatsoever. Can we measure benefits? And they looked at the research that was done over the previous decades. And what they found was that every single organ system, all 11 systems in the body. So your eyes and visual system, your immune system, your breathing pulmonary system, your heart and your circulatory system, your immune system, your nerve system, your hormonal system, every single organ system in the entire body had positive changes with chiropractic adjustments when people had no symptoms whatsoever. So just like you, Dr. Kevin, who you get adjusted weekly and you have for your entire life, I've done the same thing. You don't get adjusted because you have heartburn. You don't get heartburn.
Yeah.
You don't get adjusted because you have back pain. You don't get adjusted because you have headaches. You don't get those things. You get adjusted to tune your nerve system to make sure it's adaptable to its environment, right? To strengthen your baseline level of health. That's the reason you get adjusted. That's the reason I get adjusted. And it's the reason I encourage people to see a chiropractor on a regular basis for the rest of their lives. And that's like, it seems self-serving, right? General people will say, oh, that's self-serving. You're a chiropractor. You want people to go see you for the rest of your lives. Yeah, absolutely. I do. I do the same thing for myself, for my wife, for my children. And I tell everybody to do the same thing because I know the inherent benefits that you get from specific chiropractic adjustments and correcting the misalignments in the body. Even when you feel great, when you feel horrible, it's obvious. You don't need to
Yeah.
teach people anything. They're like, I hurt, let me fix. Right. But
Yep.
that's such a small use of chiropractic care. So I love the research. Now, what's interesting is, you know, some people will say, oh, it's unscientific or it's not as scientific. No, there is science that supports it. Could there be more? Absolutely. The National Institutes of Health spend $54 billion a year on research in America. right? That they spend every single year on research projects, but 99.7% of that is for drugs and pharmaceuticals,
Dang, that's
right? And so
crazy.
chiropractic gets about depending on the year, between 1 million, at the highest I've ever seen is $10 million dollars in a year, but usually it's around $1 million dollars a year out of $54 billion budget. And then they turn around and say, "Oh, you're unscientific." And you're like, "Well, we're self-funding all of this research. Pharma doesn't self-fund. Pharma gets these multi-billion dollar companies, they get funded by the NIH, by the government, by our tax dollars." Right? So I'm currently right now advocating the new administration, the new HHS, to give more money towards chiropractic research, so it could just be common knowledge that, hey, if you want your immune system to work better, get adjusted, right? Like for you and I, that's like obvious. If you want your heart to beat better and have a better baseline level of pulse rate and blood pressure, get adjusted. I mean, that science exists, but it needs to be more robust, which I agree with. But we also have clinical experience now. I have 25 years of my hands on patients and seeing before and afters, and I've seen everything heal. Like almost all diseases I've seen reverse just with adjustments. Now, do we advocate for nutrition and detoxification and hormone balance and not putting poisons in our bodies? Of course, we advocate for those things. Those are fundamentals. You have a fundamental health program where you work super hard to teach people those things, and so do I, right? But your nervous system is supreme over all of that stuff. And so that's why I'm excited actually with the new kind of mentality of Health and Human Services, the new mentality of NIH to look to things that are more natural, to look to, you know, uh, support and give research dollars to, more natural things instead of just this pharmaceutical based healthcare. Like, for the last 50 years, it's been if you have a problem, you take a pill. That's totally insane. People are starting to work up to that now, like because of your headaches aren't a lack of Tylenol, like you and I always say, right? And so the population, the general kind of zeitgeist is starting to like wake up to the way chiropractors think now, because chiropractors have always thought in the vein of like supporting the innate wisdom of the body. That's why we're chiropractors. Our job is not to like interfere with the body. It's not to alter the body. Our job is to remove interference, whether that's nerve interference, whether that's chemical or mental, emotional interference, to allow the body to be healthy and well, because that's the basis of, where our physiology should be, is healthy and well. So I've gone on 27 different tangents
I
in
love it.
in 1 minute there. But, yeah, so I'm actually quite excited, like, I feel for natural healthcare practitioners like chiropractors, there's literally no better time to be in this profession, because I think we're going to see, like, an influx of actually research dollars that support, and the reason that's important, like, you and I don't need that on the ground level with our patients, because we know after decades of experience what happens to our patients when they follow our recommendation. They get well, right? However, the decision makers in Washington, the decision makers who with insurance companies, right? They live in a research-based world, and they need that data, and we can provide that data. We just need to spend the time, energy, and money and focus to create and to deliver to them.
Yeah, and it's so as you touched on there, like it's so incredible, like what is happening right now. Politics aside, like whether you're right, whether you're left, it doesn't matter. Like if you're not excited about make America healthy again and research actually going into something besides pharmaceutical drugs, I mean that's crazy to me. And it's so exciting to see that shift. And I'm sure you see this on a daily basis with your patients, how just because of this movement and because of what RFK is doing, you're seeing so many people having their eyes opened to the truth about things, not just the truth about the dangers of medications, which most people knew were always there, or the dangers of vaccinations, but also getting to see like the truth behind the positives of natural healing and what
Yes.
removing toxins from your food can do. So I don't think there's any better time than ever in our lifetimes or anybody's lifetime for, yes, our profession and the natural health profession, but also for the general public, the general population to finally get the information that they have deserved for so long, get true science behind that, and then be able to apply that into their lives.
Yeah, and I think that's like a function of out of necessity as well, because our children have become so sick that there's like a desperate need to figure out what's going on from mothers. So this whole revolution that we're seeing in healthcare has been driven and led by mothers, of course, aided by chiropractors and naturopaths and homeopaths, of course, right? However, it's the mothers who are like, I don't want my children to
Yeah.
be sick anymore. What is going on? And they've been the ones pressing for research, reading the research, bringing it to lawmakers, bringing it to their doctors, questioning. And for a period of time, all that stuff was censored severely, but the mothers never backed down, and so it's very impressive. I'm very grateful for, for the strength of the mom. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, to not back down and to push this whole movement forward that at this point now is unstoppable. Now it's unstoppable. Dr. Kevin, I don't know about you, but for 25 years I've talked about health and I've talked about vaccines, as you know, and I've never seen the amount of people decide not to inject their children with these toxins like I do now. Like there's
Yeah.
literally
Same.
the majority of people who come to my office, little babies who come to my office, are unvaccinated. Now, could you ever say that 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or
Yeah.
15 years ago, or 20 or 25? Not a chance. Almost everybody was. We were the outcasts. Now everybody's saying, "Hey, I want to be like you. I don't want to be vaccinated." Right? I don't want to vaccinate my kids. I've seen what it did to my first kid. I don't want it to happen to my second kid. I saw what it did to the students in my classroom. I don't want it to happen to my kids, right? And so there's this whole shift in the focus right now that is so exciting, as somebody who advocates for natural living and for honoring the innate wisdom within the body. I absolutely love it, and you and I were born for this moment, and we're like living in it. So you know it's fascinating, it's exciting, it's exhilarating, and it's like we have to keep. I feel like it's like time to speed up in a good way to like get the message out to as many people as possible, which is why we're
Yeah.
doing this right now.
Correct. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Which, on that topic, you are like, I know your career has, it's always been down the path of natural healing in
Yeah.
general and getting that message out. But I think you've sped that up recently with your involvement in Green Med Info and then how that's led to Stand for Health Freedom. So let's start with Green Med Info. What is that? Talk about, I mean, I know what it is. I know it's an incredible, incredible database that I access personally on a regular basis. But talk to our listeners about what that is and how incredible it is.
Oh man, well, GreenMed Info. Well, Sayer G is the founder of GreenMed Info. I'm his partner. I became part of GreenMed Info. I don't know, 8 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago now, and it's a database of it's the world's largest database on research that supports natural healthcare. Right, so we house over 100,000 abstracts from the National Library of Medicine. So this is only from PubMed. It's only peer-reviewed journals that we access, and we write articles about the benefits of turmeric, the benefits of ginger, the benefits of chiropractic, the benefits of A2 milk and whey protein, based on the research that's in the National Library of Medicine. And so it's a free, you have free access to it. We send out over 100 million emails a year.
That's
uh,
unbelievable.
every day we're sending out a couple of articles on the research, but like articles that we've written about the benefits of certain products, not products for sale, but like foods and spices and herbs and things of that nature. So if people are interested, they could go to greenmedinfo.com. They could give us their email, and they will start receiving free emails that support natural medicine, which is absolutely incredible. Yeah, I saw my friend and colleague Sayer G. He was running a health food store, and he saw the need for this, and so he started building it out of his garage about
Wow.
15 years ago. And that's when I moved down to Naples, Florida, and I happened to go into his health food store, and this guy's an absolute genius. Like, I think he's a 145 IQ, and He's extremely brilliant. He knows all the chemical and physiological pathways of the human body better than any professor that I've seen before. And so he was collating this, and he was like, "I don't know if I should continue." I'm like, "Listen, as a floor practitioner with my hands on patients every day, this would be extremely valuable for me because I can go and say, "Hey, if you have headaches, here's what I recommend. Here, if you have hypertension, you can do this, eat this way instead of this way based off of the research." And so that's what we've done. And, we also have, ill effects of things like Tylenol and vaccines and things like that, because that's part of the research that's on the National Library of Medicine. So it's gone all around the world. We're in, 208 countries, 204, I think, or 208 countries around the world.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
and we've had millions of followers over the years, um, until we were deplatformed, and then
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you about that.
yeah.
Labeled as spreading misinformation about turmeric.
Yeah.
How did that get you labeled as a global terrorist?
Well, actually, yeah, when you start talking about the benefits of vitamin D and sunshine on the immune system, they see that as like a threat to the vaccine companies, and so they don't want that information out there, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So pre-pandemic in 2008, there was what we call the Great Digital Book Burn of 2018, where Google all of a sudden just wiped us off of their search engines. Like when you search the turmeric or a ginger, GreenMed Info came up number one on Google for so many health topics because we had so many followers, and we were writing articles that were of gravitas because they were backed by science and research. So a lot of professors would use them, a lot of scholars would use our articles, and a lot of people were reading them. Well, overnight, us, Dr. Mercola, Dr. Axe, and Jordan Rubin, all of the kind of health people in the health space were wiped off of Google search engines. And the reason they did that is because, it was becoming so popular that it was taken away from drug sales, etc. So yeah, we saw that coming. Well, it was happening to so we saw that, and then we started personally getting targeted. Like we'd put up a meme on Pinterest, and then all of a sudden they would shut down our account. And we would email them and say like, "Hey, why are you shutting down our account? We were talking about the benefits of vitamin D." And they're like, "That doesn't follow our community standards." And we're like, "Man, if this is happening to us now, we think it's going to be happening to others." Right. And so, well, there's a whole list of things that I could mention.
Yeah.
I don't, I'm not exactly like it got so bad that, we have a a repository of over 1 million emails of people who've like opted in. We don't do any advertising. So we don't pay a dime for advertising. We just put out content and people choose to follow us. And the email service provider, MailChimp, who actually houses all our emails, like when you have a big list like that, it has to be housed somewhere.
Yep.
They blocked us from using our own emails.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah. They blocked our ability to monetize. They blocked our bank accounts. They blocked our PayPal accounts. They blocked everything, any third-party application that we had, they blocked. This is pre-pandemic,
Yeah, and
pre-pandemic.
obviously almost everybody knows, especially in the natural healthcare world, that just got amplified during the pandemic. I mean,
They turned the screws on really tightly as to the point where, Sayer G, the founder, my partner in crime, he was listed as one of the members of the disinformation dozen by Joe Biden, right? And so him and Robert Kennedy Jr. and a list of others were called the disinformation dozen, spreading misinformation. And he literally said that they are domestic terrorists
it's
responsible for the death of Americans, bringing research not on natural health concerns to the world. Like that's how insane it got.
It really is insane, and
Yeah.
the and I think this is an important thing for the general public to hear because they don't realize, like, how much what they see and hear on a daily basis is controlled, and that sounds crazy to a lot of people, and it sounds conspiracy theorist, but it's just as simple as follow the money. Who controls the advertising? who like it and who controls government through their money. And it comes
There you
down
go.
to largely the pharmaceutical companies. And because of that massive, massive amount of trillions of dollars, they get to control what the general public hears. They get to control the narrative, the message. And then as a result of that, the American people and their health pay the price. Not just the American people, worldwide pay the price. And then that, I believe, perfect segue into what you're doing now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe like the Green Med info then and all of the getting labeled as domestic terrorists, like that has led to the standforhealthfreedom.com, correct?
Well, actually, it was just a little bit before that when we started getting signals that they were like kind of blocking our ability to spread our message. We started in early 2019. We started Stand for Health Freedom because we saw that our health freedom rights and our ability to have free speech was getting censored. And so before the pandemic, it's
Okay.
not like we foresaw the pandemic, but we foresaw something that was coming like a pandemic, which would allow them to censor on a more broad based level, which of course happened. So we started an organization, a nonprofit called Stand for Health Freedom. You can go to standforhealthfreedom.com. We have a million advocates. We've had up to I mean, we literally are a grassroots organization where you and I, from our kitchen or our living room, could let our voices be heard to the decision makers at a local government level, like your local municipality, your local city, your local county, at a state level, and at the national level as well. And so, for example, we are concerned about basic things like parental rights to make choices for their children, religious rights like having religious exemptions for vaccines, informed choice like we should have the choice, and we should be informed as to what we put into the body and what the possible ramifications are. And then have the choice to either do it or not do it. And although that seems like just basic American values,
That's
right?
exactly what I was
Basic
gonna say. American values and
constitutional. Exactly.
common
You
sense.
would think it's common sense, basic stuff, but in so many areas, those have been eroded. And actually we don't have that. Like, I grew up in Canada and I've been living in Florida for 15 years now. When we first moved here and had to put our kids in school, my kids aren't vaccinated. And so we had to go to the local county office to get an exemption for my kids to be able to go to school. You don't need that in Canada. Canada's a much more socialist country than the US, but in the US, you actually need to get an exemption to get an education, and you have to get an exemption from a medical product. Which is it's mind-blowing because when I grew up in Canada and we would the Canadians look at the US as like the land of the free. You're free to do anything. Like, ultimately, it's your choice to do anything, but it's not really like that in all aspects, and
Yeah,
the vaccine's a great example. And so we advocate for those things. We create calls to actions. We monitor bills across the entire country. We're in almost all of the states in the United States of America. We partner with local state organizations, and we've been able to do incredible things over the last 6 years that we've been like, for example, in Florida, we started here in our county to get fluoride out of the water. Started here, we did it, and we were able to use Stand for Health Freedom to rally people to say, "Yeah, I don't want poison in my water." Like, if you want fluoride, get it in your toothpaste or go get it a prescription for it, and you can take it that way, right? But don't force me to get it just because you want it, right? And so
absolutely.
and so we won that, and then we took it to Naples. We won it here. We won it in Lee County, and now the whole state has decided to remove fluoride from every single municipality, county, city in the state of Florida, which is incredible. And now other states are following suit because of what we've been able to accomplish here,
That is
right?
so awesome. It's
Like
to
it,
see
it's
that
it's it
movement happening.
yeah, totally. It's just one example of so many. We've actually created now over 200 calls to actions for different scenarios, different bills. We have people on the team now who write policy at a national level, at state levels, at local levels. Like, we have experts, we have lawyers on the team, we have policy experts on our team. And it's really incredible when we go to Washington because we're now viewed as one of the most respected health policy organizations in the country, which is absolutely phenomenal from a small need, seeing that, oh my gosh, we're being censored, to now this big national footprint that we have, and at times international footprint, which is pretty incredible at the rate at which we've grown. But obviously the pandemic has caused people to look into what we were interested in through Stand for Health Freedom,
And the
right?
cool thing there is it's not like you're getting policy changed based on your conspiracy theory. You're getting
No,
policy change because this is backed by science, and it's backed by a ton of science that's just been buried. I mean, if we use the fluoride as a perfect example, it is one of the worst neurotoxins on the planet, toxic to your brain and nervous system, and yet it's put into our drinking water supply. So yeah, some
yeah.
benefits to the teeth, maybe. Detriments to your brain, absolutely,
Yeah,
and
b
we're
well,
all
and
forced to take it.
a whole bunch of other detriments, and that's exactly what I did when I went and presented to the commissioners here in our county. I went to Green Med Info, and I showed them how much research was actually related to the ill effects of fluoride to the human body, right? And it affects, and the negative effects. There's hundreds of research articles showing the damaging effects of fluoride, and people just don't know. They just assume that the government does it for you, does and looks out for you. But there's all kinds of, loopholes, and there's all kinds of like, oh, well, we didn't even know that. But when you educate people with the science, and then you back that up with sound policy that supports the basic constitutional rights of free speech, of privacy, of informed choice, of religious freedoms, of parental rights, then everybody kind of agrees with that. Now, there's the hardcore chemical lovers who love fluoride, who wanna keep it in the water forever and add and add and add continuously, but it doesn't match with the science. So, anyways, we've created this tidal wave of, people who are interested in, like, actual health freedom. So from there, now we have on our website, Vote for Health Freedom. So there's candidates at every level of government who have come to us and said, "We want your endorsement because I'm a health freedom advocate. I believe in what you guys believe in." And so we actually vet them. We have them fill out questionnaires, and you could go to our website and look for Vote for Health Freedom, and we have hundreds of endorsements of, pro health freedom advocates who are running for local government, who are running for governorship, who are running for Congress, and so we've been able to support people in making good decisions that way as well.
Well, you already know, obviously, what you're doing is working, but it is so cool. And just to give you another idea of how it's working, I'm seeing Stand for Health Freedom show up in our community here as well. Where,
Oh, that's amazing. I love
yeah,
to
there's a
hear it.
group of people that have started it and incorporated into local natural health offices, and also seeing politicians getting involved. So really, really cool. And on that note, actually, Leah and Dr. Nick Wilson are going to be my guests on next month's
Oh,
podcast.
incredible. So yeah, Leah Wilson is just such a godsend. I mean, she's a lawyer, and I'll save her story. I'll let her share her story when she's on the podcast. But we Sayer and I invited her to be part of. She's the executive director of Stand for Health Freedom, and she's really the mastermind behind the whole operation and how it's become such a national powerhouse. But she has a personal story, and actually every single person on our team at Stand for Health Freedom, I'm talking the policymakers, all the lawyers, all the advocates that we have had personal stories that where their health freedoms have been infringed and hurt in some way. And so it's a mission for everybody on the team to get this out to the general public. And another thing I want to touch on is, there's such bright people who work on this team because we also have to see and figure out what's coming down the pike, and where, because there's so many laws that are trying to get passed that'll actually harm our health freedoms. And so one of them, as an example, and I'm sure Leah will talk about this in great detail, so I won't talk too much about it, is genetic determinism. So right now there's all kinds of laws that are being passed or trying to be passed that are saying we want to test all babies' genes at birth, make it just part of the general test. Now, on the surface that seems like a good idea, You're like, "Oh, we can see what type of problems that these kids may have." You and I both know that genetic determinism is over. Like,
Yeah.
epigenetics is where it's at. Your health outcome is not based on your parents' decisions. It can be if you follow the same things as your parents did, right? But if you change and you make different decisions than your parents, you don't have to have the diabetes that your dad did. You don't have to have the cancer that your uncle had. You don't have to have the heart high blood pressure that your mom had, right? Because you can make different decisions, and the epigenetics is actually the key, right? But this can lock people into making genetic edits, CRISPR type of decisions at birth that might harm the children long term. And so, we have such bright people who are able to kind of see, this massive kind of five-dimensional chessboard that's being played, and to proactively kind of circumvent those laws from being in place to protect the public based on our constitutional rights.
That is awesome. I'm sure you're very familiar with Bruce Lipton.
Of course,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so Bruce Lipton, I love the way he puts it, like, about epigenetics, and what he says is your genetics that were given to you by your parents is the same as somebody handing you a loaded shotgun. When is that loaded shotgun dangerous? It's dangerous when you decide to pull the trigger. And that's exactly the same thing with your genetics. Can you pull the trigger and have that breast cancer gene go active and cause breast cancer? Absolutely. If you're filling your body with toxic foods and chemicals and pharmaceutical drugs and not exercising and all the other great things, not getting chiropractic care. But if you choose a different path, then that gene stays dormant in a sense and it doesn't express itself. So I think that's an
Exactly.
incredible message to hear. And yes, great to find out what are your genetics, but not from a now how can we treat you with a pharmaceutical drug standpoint. Find out what are your genetics. And then, like for me, for example, my dad has Alzheimer's, and pretty bad right now. And so I got tested and unfortunately found out that I have like the worst case scenario for having the Alzheimer's gene. Is that scary to me? No, it's not because it's forced me to take even more massive action than I already was to ensure that that doesn't happen to me, that that's not my path. So I'm all for testing for genetics. Like you said, sounds like a great thing on the surface level. It's just what you do with that information from there.
No, correct. And we know that, the reason that these laws are being passed is because there's interest behind these laws, like CRISPR technology, like pharmaceutical companies who own that will create kind of a business model based off of that system, based off of those results. And we want to protect the public. We're all for science. Come on, I own a website that's all about science, right?
Yeah.
So we're all for science. We're all for innovation. We're all for moving forward and getting better and better and better. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, what the science is showing is that actually going back to our roots, more traditional living, regenerative, organic, certified farms, right? Less plastics in our clothes, less plastics in our environment, getting back to glass, getting back to healthy fats like beef tallow, for example, over margarine. I mean, we all know those are showing, the science is showing those are far healthier for humans than not. So it seems like the less intervention from man, the better, right?
Yes.
And that is backed by science. So I love it because again, it walks in sync with the chiropractic philosophy that you and I have grown up with in our professional life and careers.
Absolutely. And so, shifting gears here a little bit, I was listening to a podcast that you did,
Ugh.
and
Oh,
one of the things that we talk about, it was great, by the way.
okay.
And one of the things that we talk about regularly on my podcast and with foundational health is being intentional, living an intentional life. And so, I heard you tell a story. I don't know if you remember this or not, but when your daughter, I think, was 9 months old and just starting to walk, you were on your cell phone, I believe it was, with a colleague talking about business. And your daughter, you were home alone with your daughter. Your daughter walked over, grabbed your hand, grabbed your cell phone out of your hand, set it down, and led you over to play with the toys with her. And then that led to you having like that aha moment of, holy cow. And to me, like when I was hearing this story, it was all about intention. Like, how did that change your outlook on things and being more intentional with your daughter and everything else in your life?
Okay, so that's it's like a 90-degree turn, and I haven't heard that or said that, I think, in a really long time, but that moment actually changed my life.
Yes, so awesome.
Yeah, because I I realized that I was spending the time with her, but I wasn't spending time with her. I was with her, but not with her. I was on the phone talking to a colleague about something, and she needed me to be present. She wanted me to be present, and that experience changed my life because I realized that in order to be, I wanna say, successful in the relationship with my daughter, I had to be 100% present when I was with my daughter, and of course, that extends to every aspect of your life. If you're with a patient, taking care of a patient, and you're thinking about your daughter, that's not being 100% present with your daughter, with your patient, and so your patient innately understands that you're not all there with them. And I do believe, like, we have other senses that are not just our 5 senses that we're not even aware of yet, where we can pick up from innate to innate if people are, like, focused on us or focused on other things. When it's obvious, you can tell, right? But I think even when it's not obvious, there's some cells in our body that are able to tell.
I agree.
Um, I don't know what those cells are or how that works yet. I'm sure it'll be discovered when we get more sensitive material and more sensitive testing sensors to be able to see what's happening in the human body. But yeah, that changed my life because I recognized at that point that I had to be very deliberate, very intentional if I wanted to have a successful family, a successful business, successful results with patients, great relationships with all of those people, right? I mean, we've known this for a long time that, health isn't eating well and exercising. I mean, that's part of it, but it's not everything. I mean, the main actual contribution to healthy longevity is relationships and community.
Yeah,
So if you wanna have a healthy community, you have to pay attention to your community and who's around you, and you have to nurture those relationships, and whatever you nurture actually grows and develops and expands and becomes stronger, and what you ignore kind of whittles away and wilts. And, that's what my daughter taught me, in that moment there. Yeah, she was literally walking along. She wasn't even walking fully yet, I believe. She was, like, walking along the furniture at that point, and she grabbed the cell phone out of my hand and put it down and grabbed my hand and took me to her toys.
that is so
And
awesome.
it was like, yeah, totally, totally life-changing. Because we I was trying to work that. So it was a Thursday morning, and I know that because, of course, I was at work a lot. My wife was at home with her. She was our first, and, and so I would on Thursday morning say, "Okay," to my wife, I would say, "Okay, you can go out and just run whatever errands you wanna run, go out with your friends, do whatever you wanna do, leave the house, let me be alone with Melina." And I had certain times of the week that I would be alone with her, and that was one. Right? But a lot of those times I was alone with her, but I was doing other things, and she taught me a great lesson.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think one of the reasons that that
Mm.
story stood out to me when I heard it is this is what, 6 years ago now, and I had come home from work. And in my mind at that time, I was very intentional. I like, thought I was like doing all of these wonderful things with my family, but I would get home from work at like 7:30 at night and then often answering emails, answering text messages. And one night in
It
particular I was
doesn't
sitting.
end. It doesn't
Yes,
end.
correct, exactly. And
Yeah,
so
I
one
know.
night I was sitting on the couch and I'm on my phone and I remember my daughter like saying my name, but it was one of those like daddy, 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 daddy. And I'm like, "Honey, I'm just finishing up some work. Give me a second." And she's like, "Daddy, do you love your cell phone more than me?" And
Oh my
it
gosh.
literally
Oh
I
my
felt like my
gosh.
wife sent her in the room to say that, which she didn't. Well, at least she tells me she didn't. But that was that moment for me as well. Like, it changed my life dramatically, and, by no means am I perfect at this point,
No,
but
no,
I would
no.
say 95% of the time, that cell phone goes on airplane mode the second
Yeah.
I pull into the garage, so I am present with my kids when I'm with my kids.
Oh, I love
So
it. Good. I mean, what less I mean, our kids teach us so much. My daughter's 20 years old now at university. My son's 18, about to be 19 at just start. He's a freshman, she's a junior, and they're doing amazingly well. So no credit to us, but I mean, our kids, we've been so blessed with our kids. They've been incredible all the way through and teaching us so many lessons. That was a
Still,
huge ones, but still
yeah.
like hundreds and hundreds of good lessons with our children throughout the course of these decades.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
2 more things I would love to touch on in closing here. I know we've got some time constraints on both ends here. So, number 1, this podcast is gonna be released at the beginning of the year. So, don't wanna catch you too off guard here, but I'm sure you've got a good answer for this.
Uh-oh.
Um, what would you recommend for people? Obviously, the beginning of the year is a time where people are setting health goals. They're making New Year's resolutions. And often, as we both know, those resolutions are gone by the end of the month, and the health goals just, they're never achieved. So, what would you recommend for somebody setting more of a realistic health goal?
What do I recommend for
Yeah,
somebody
making it
setting
more
a
realistic as opposed to something that's just not a doable thing.
well, I mean, I don't wanna give limits, because, like, we've seen incredible you and I have both seen people lose 120 pounds in a short period of time, come off 13, 14, 15 different medications.
Yes.
In a matter of, months, they've been able to accomplish those things. I know you have. I know so many of us practitioners have seen it. So it's not like I want to put limitations, but ultimately, it's like I would say what's really important is just how you talk to yourself. Because I would say make that an important goal because so many people actually no longer make goals for their health because they've given up.
Yeah.
So the idea of, like, saying, "Oh, here are my goals for 2026," so many people, those have died a long time ago because they've failed themselves so often that they no longer actually trust themselves to be able to do it. Right? And so they have this negative self-talk that just keeps kinda well, you said that before, you've never lost the weight. What makes you think this is gonna work? There's like that little devil on their shoulder talking to them nonstop about how you can't do things. So my advice to the to people is to start talking to yourself differently, and if you hear that negative advice, talk back to it. You have to talk back to it because it'll win every time. 85% of our thoughts are negative about ourselves. Right? And so when you see or hear, "You can't do this," "Oh, remember, no, you're broke. You can't afford this. You don't have the money for this. You don't have the energy for this. You don't have the brain power for this." You have to talk back to those thoughts because what I've seen and experienced after dealing with now, I mean, how many patients do you think you've dealt with over the years? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
100,000 plus, million. I've
Absolutely.
given several million adjustments in 25 years, right? I've seen people in incredibly horrible circumstances have the best, most incredible results, right, in their lives, in all aspects of their lives. So it's been a fascinating kind of sociological experience to go through this life, being able to see and touch so many people. And so I would say talk back to those thoughts is the number one thing that people have to do. Because if you don't, those thoughts will win and they'll cause you to quit and they'll cause you to be negative about yourself and they'll cause you to stay overweight, sick on medications with a bunch of symptoms like, you could regenerate at 85 years old. You could regenerate at 90 years old. You don't have to be, 18 years old and like a young buck, just, to heal and regenerate. No, at every stage in your life, you could regenerate, but yeah, it starts right here. You have to believe it here. And then once that happens, then your belief structure changes. Then you start to make better decisions and you decide, "Oh, I'm waking up 30 minutes early and I'm going for a walk." Like, or I'm going to the gym to work out, or I'm waking up 30 minutes early because I'm going to make myself a better lunch, a better dinner, or whatever the case is to bring to work today, or to be prepared for the kids, or whatever the case is. And you'll start to make better decisions, and that snowballs. Listen, when we were in chiropractic college, I'm sure you didn't eat as well as you eat today, right? You
Yeah.
didn't have the knowledge, you didn't have the expertise, you didn't have like the know-how or the desire, right? But when you started making positive changes in your health, like it was one step at a time. And I think people will get overwhelmed because they're like, well, I have to change 27 different things. Just start right here. Start talking back to the thoughts, and when you talk back to the thoughts, you'll regain the trust. And then all of a sudden, those goals that you do set will start to become easier to be accomplished and reached because your mindset has shifted.
I absolutely
Yeah.
love that advice. That's really perfect. And yeah, in chiropractic school, like you remember the saying in Animal House, "Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son." Uh, he was talking to me.
Okay, that's great. That is great.
I've
That's
I've
funny.
made some changes since then.
Oh, I know
Um,
you have. I know you have.
okay, so I close every podcast reminding my listeners to make health their hobby. So the question
Yeah.
to you
Mm.
is what are some things that you do on a daily basis, you and your wife, that you've led your kids down that path as well now or over the years, where you look at like, that is part of my hobby, but it's a healthy hobby. So how do you make health your hobby in your life?
Oh man. Uh, let me. How do I count the ways? I don't
Yeah.
want to be too annoying to people.
That's awesome. That's really
I'm
awesome.
so annoying. How do I make like what you want me to go through like a day, or do you want me to give like a couple examples or
Whatever you want. Yeah, you can absolutely. I mean, I think it's incredibly invaluable to hear what other people are doing, because this is something that I talk about on a regular basis. I recently did a podcast on what does a day look like for me. And yes, I reminded people like you don't have to incorporate all of these things right
I know
away.
it this is so just so you know, like health is like my life, right? As
Yeah.
it is for you. Like this is what we live. So it's so much fun for me to do
Yes.
all these things
Couldn't
that
agree
we do
more.
for our health that to some people it sounds absolutely insane. But I mean, this morning I was at the gym at 5 in the morning because I love going to the gym at 5 in the morning, and I don't do it at lunch and I don't do it at night because I have other things and things get in the way and then it doesn't get done. So I've decided many, many years ago that if I'm going to do it, I have to do it super early. And I was never a morning person, right? But I became a go to bed a little bit earlier person so I could get up in the morning and feel
Yeah.
regenerated and refreshed and alive most mornings without coffee or anything else necessary. But so things like what I love to do, I love like red light therapy. I do that on a regular basis. I had a concussion, a really bad concussion, many, many years ago. And I used to have a totally photographic memory. So I was one of those annoying kids who could like read things once over and kind of go ace a test, right? So I didn't have to study that much going through school or chiropractic college. But afterwards, I had a massive concussion where I couldn't even stand up for a week. Like I would stand and fall. I felt
Hmm.
fine lying down. I'd stand and I'd fall over. And so you know how great chiropractic is for concussions. So I got adjusted regularly, daily, actually a couple times a day I was getting adjusted. And then I became functional again, but my photographic memory was never as good as it was, and this happened when I was 30. And then I was doing a podcast with the editor of the Journal of Photobiomodulation. This guy's a Harvard grad, and Dr. Michael Hamlin's his name, and he's literally studied lasers and red light and photobiomodulation, how light and all the different colors of light affect the human body and which receptors and all that stuff. So I had this fascinating discussion with him, and he was telling me about the benefits for concussion and memory and things like that. And this guy at 82 years old was wearing like a red light cap over his head every day, not for hair, for brain, because
Wow.
it can penetrate. So I use that. He told me, he goes 20 minutes a day, twice a day. He goes, just get panels, put them right over your head. And I did that. And literally I did that for 3 months, 2 times a day, at least 7 days a week. And I can tell you that my memory was like, it completely rejuvenated my memory, because what it does is it activates the mitochondria, the energy centers, so your cells can work to the best of their ability. So after my workout, I red light therapy regularly. I roll out every week. We have one day of our workouts is actually a total regen session. So we do knees over toes stuff. We do rolling out ball work. We do like, massage ourselves with the guns and stuff like that in order to like stay flexible and healthy. I go to a stretch guy to get stretched. That's been so much fun for me. But I do 1,000 things though. I mean, I like from carnivore diet to keto, I'm always playing with my diet. I'm always testing different supplements on myself as well. But I would say like one of the best things is just like waking up early and then working out. That to me sets the tone for the day. And if I don't do that, it doesn't release the same amount of energy in my body, and I don't have the same energy that day.
Yeah,
I could
couldn't
go
agree
all
more.
day long if I work out at 5 in the morning. If I sleep until 7 and then I go to work, I don't have the same energy at all. That to me is like number one priority for me to make me feel awesome and healthy and revived and energized for the day.
Well, that is a beautiful answer, and it's literally, I mean, that's how I just like what you were talking about there, like tweaking your diet a little bit this way, or playing with supplements. Like that to me is like what making health your hobby is all about. Every
So much
aspect
fun.
of that. Yeah,
So
it
much
literally
fun.
becomes fun. And I know that sound like if somebody's not there, I know that sounds crazy to them, and that's why it's a journey. But you got to start somewhere, whether it's that 5 o'clock in the morning workout, whether it's getting a red light panel, whatever it is, you have to start somewhere. And then it absolutely becomes a fun journey. And the most fun part of it is you can be, I don't know how old you are, Dr. Joel.
50 I'm 50. I'm
Okay,
50.
I'm
Yeah.
52, and there is no question I feel the best at 52 that I've ever felt in my life. I feel
Agreed.
10 times better than I did when I was 25 years old and, in chiropractic school, not leading a healthy lifestyle. And that is the cool thing, that it can just keep getting better and better because your body is absolutely capable of healing and regenerating.
Love it. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, man. That's such a great insight. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for who you are. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on today. And thank you for everything that you are doing for every single one of us with standforhealthfreedom.com, with greenmedinfo.com. Can't recommend enough to go to both of those websites. Sign up for the newsletters at greenmedinfo.com. Sign up for anything and everything you can at Stand for Health Freedom. So keep doing everything you're doing, fighting the good fight. And I'm sure we'll connect again soon at a seminar or somewhere.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kevin. I appreciate you.
All right. Have a great day, Dr.
Thank
Joel.
you. You too.
Thank you for listening to the Foundational Health Podcast. As always, if you would like to learn more about making health your hobby, visit our website at foundationalhealth365.com and follow me on Facebook at Kevin Schultz, DC, Foundational Health.